It's good to see all of you here this morning. I'll add my word of welcome to each one of you for being here today. If you're joining us by live feed this morning, we welcome you as well. Perhaps you'll be joining us at some time in the future as you view this in a recorded fashion, and we're thankful if you're doing that also. There are some here this morning that have been part of the congregation, have moved away. We're glad to have you back. And perhaps there's some here this morning that are looking for a family, a church home. And if that's your case this morning, your search is over. You found it. We're glad that you're here. When you walk in here every Sunday morning, it feels like a family reunion all over again, doesn't it? So we're glad you're here. We hope you enjoy being here. We hope that you have enjoyed the service so far, not just from the standpoint of a physical enjoyment, but that it's been an enjoyment to your soul. That's why we came here this morning, not to please your ear, although we hope that happened, but that's not the point. We came here to please God and to fill our soul. And we hope that's happened already, and we hope the rest of the service will do likewise. You heard the reading this morning. It came from the book of 1 Peter. Most of you are already familiar with the books of 1 and 2 Peter, so you know a lot about this already. These books were written very near the end of Peter's life, we believe, and that gives you a little bit of perspective on where he was coming from at that point. And pretty amazing life that he lived, wasn't it? We don't have time to go over all of his life this morning, but I do want to mention just a few highlights because it'll put into context the things that Peter wrote. So I'm going to mention just a few things that happened in Peter's life that were pretty impressive. He was involved in almost all of the amazing events of the New Testament that we read about. Almost every one of those, Peter is present, involved, a participant in it. He was involved in many, many things with the Lord. He walked on the water at the bidding of Jesus. Of course, we know the story of that and how he was able to do that at first, but lost his faith, his confidence, and then wasn't able to. He watched as Jesus raised the dead, and we don't know how many times, but we know sometimes. And how wonderful it would be to see something like that. He personally witnessed, he was one of three who did the transfiguration of Christ, and wouldn't that have been something to be involved in? He was the one that was chosen to bring the gospel to the Gentiles for the very first time. So I suspect all of us this morning, every one of us here, owes a debt of gratitude to Peter because he's the one that brought the gospel to people like us. We might not have ever heard it except for Peter or somebody else who might have been chosen later. Peter wasn't a perfect man. Not a perfect man at all. And when I read about him, I can relate to Peter in a lot of ways because Peter made a lot of mistakes. And when I see the mistakes he made, I look at it and say, I can see myself doing that. So a lot of mistakes in Peter's life that we know about probably are written so that we can do that. We can relate to him as a human being. We know the story about him resorting to violence and cutting off the chief priest's servant's ear when Jesus was arrested. We know about some of his arrogance when he said, look, everybody else is going to abandon you, Lord, but not me. It won't happen to me, but it did. He, in fact, 3 times denied knowing who the Lord was within a matter of a very short period of time. Right after the resurrection, it looks like he was probably overcome with self-doubt and questioning about what his role should be. And so what did he do? Well, he went back fishing, back to what he used to do. And then there's the story about what happened at Antioch. He goes there, and at first he'll eat with the Gentiles, but then when the Jews showed up, he decided he wasn't going to eat with the Gentiles anymore because he was afraid of how the Jews would look at him because of that. He caused a lot of trouble in the church there at Antioch because of how he acted about that issue. So, as we think about these things, and there's a lot more we could say about Peter, but that's enough. You get the picture of the kind of man he was. He was a man like we are as human beings. He had lots of good things in his life, and he had lots of problems too. He had lots of things that he did wrong. And this is the person who wrote the words that we're going to think about this morning. This is a person who had learned about weakness, and John about lack of humility. He had learned that in person, and he learned it the hard way. He learned it by living it. And so when we read the things that Peter had to say, we can not only relate to those things, but we can believe those things because he's speaking as a person who knows. And this is the total of the reading that we had this morning, and I'm not going to reread that. This is right at the end of the first epistle that Peter wrote that we have recorded for us. And we're not going to have time to talk about everything that's there. There's lots that could be said about this little short reading this morning. We don't have time for that. This is what we're going to talk about, one verse. And it's packed with meaning. And there's plenty of it for us to talk about this morning. And in fact, if we got into very much more, we'd be here a long time. So we're going to restrict our comments to just this one verse. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. There's a lot that's said there and a lot that we can say about that. So let's get started in our discussion this morning. Would you guys in the sound booth maybe lower the lights just a little bit up here? I think these slides may be just a little bit hard to see. Thank you. I've entitled the subject of our discussion this morning, Facing the Roaring Lion, and you'll see why in just a moment. Some of you probably have seen something like this. Maybe you've been to a circus or watched this on TV, and you've seen lions in their what we might call trainers, and that's really about all that can be done with a lion is train. We can't really tame lions, we can only train them, and lions are going to be what lions are. But you've probably seen that, and so you know a little bit about it. But in addition this morning to having a spiritual application, some of you younger folks may get a little bit of a lesson in animal life, the animal kingdom. And so we'll mix a little bit of that in to make the point of our lesson this morning. So we'll be talking about what it's like to face the roaring lion. And it's not that lion on the screen there, but you'll see what it is in a few minutes if you don't already know. So Peter writes these words, be sober and be vigilant. He starts this series of thoughts that he wrote in the end of the book of 1 Peter with those words. Those words, be sober means, and vigilant means just about what you'd think it means. And we use something similar to that in our own vocabulary today. If you look around and listen very much, you'll hear these things said. Have you heard the term eternal vigilance is the price of freedom? Have you heard that phrase used? You probably have. It's used a lot when we talk about how much we spend for national defense. We spend trillions of dollars a year because we believe that statement. Eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. So we're willing to pay to have the eternal vigilance that we think is necessary. You hear people talk about existential threats. An existential threat just simply means a threat to the existence of something. In this case, an existential threat to our freedom would be a threat to the very existence of our country. And so we use that phrase to describe how we feel about that. Sometimes you hear that phrase used, be aware of your surroundings. I've heard that a lot on the news lately. Probably most of you have heard about the murders in Idaho. And right after those happened, people were scared and they thought, is it dangerous? Are we still in danger? Can we go out and move about? Should we be alarmed? And I heard the police officer say several times, be aware of your surroundings. And that's just another way of saying what Peter was saying. Be aware of your surroundings. Know what's going on around you. Pay attention to what's happening around you. I'm going to show my age here, but there's some people here who will also understand what this is about. There was a show years ago, back in the 80s, called Hill Street Blues. And in fact, there's still reruns of that, so if you want to see that, you still can. And it would often depict a police department that they would have their roll call in the morning, and this is really how it does happen. The police officers would all line up before their shift, and they'd be briefed by whoever was in command of that shift. And in this case, what the commander would say is the very last words. Every time that would happen, he said, "Let's be careful out there. Let's be careful out there." And it's the same way of saying these other things that we just mentioned. Be aware of your surroundings. Eternal vigilance is the price of our freedom. It's the same thing, just said in a different way and in a different setting. In each one of those cases, the need for vigilance and awareness was heightened because of the degree of danger that was involved. In all three of those cases, we know that there's extreme danger involved, either to our country or to us personally. And so there was a reason for a heightened sense of awareness, a heightened sense of the danger that was involved. And that's why those statements get made. And Peter is offering a very similar warning to us, and for the very same reason. There is a heightened danger out there. There's a need for greater awareness of our surroundings so that we know what's going on around us. There's a threat, an existential threat, to the existence of our soul. And so Peter is warning us about that. So he says, be sober. And that doesn't have anything really to do with consuming too much alcohol. He's talking about being marked by self-control and sound moral judgment. That's the kind of soberness that Peter is calling people to. He says, be vigilant. In other words, be watchful. As the police say, know your surroundings. Pay attention to what's going on around you. And that's what Peter is telling us. You need to be watchful about what's going on. When I read those words, I thought about something that my family laughs about me doing. I've got this little thing that I go through I call it coach talk. If you've seen coaches on television, when they get interviewed, they can talk a lot and say absolutely nothing. When they finish, you think, what? What was that? And you could have said it yourself. You could have said it as well as they can. They're paid millions of dollars a year to do what they do, and you think, I don't think they know any more than I do. Obviously, that's not the case, but it sounds like it. One of the things I remember them saying, they'll go through this litany of stuff, and I'm thinking of basketball now because it's basketball season. So they'll go through about all the things the team needs to do. You know, we need to take care of the ball. We need to be a willing passer. We got to take good, open shots. We got to be moving without the ball. And we got to have our head on a swivel, they'll say. Head on a swivel. That's what Peter was saying. What's that mean, head on a swivel? Well, in the basketball world, you need to be alert to what's going on around you. You don't know when the pass may come your way. You don't know what the opponent may do. So you got to be looking around all the time. And it kind of tells you something when you hear that term. Have your head on a swivel. You know exactly what that means, don't you? It conjures up something in your head. And that's what Peter was saying. Be watchful. Have your head on a swivel. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Be looking around. Don't be wandering around not knowing what's going on around you, what other people are doing or what the events around you are like. Have your head on a swivel. Why did he give these warnings? Because there's an ever-present existential danger. And what is that danger? It's the danger of sin. As the Hebrew writer so aptly put it, a sin is something that we're so easily ensnared with. So easy for us to get wrapped up in it. It's so easy. And so Peter is warning us about something that's easy to get into and sometimes hard to get out of. We find other examples where people have said similar things. Paul, writing in the book of 2 Corinthians, talks about Satan taking advantage of us and how that's easier if we don't know what his devices are. If we don't know the tools that he uses, it's easier for him to take advantage of us. In the same book, Paul again writes about how the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, and that the same thing can happen to us, that our minds can be corrupted by the craftiness of Satan, of that evil force that's around us every day that we live. Again, in the Hebrew writer, it talks about the deceitfulness of sin. Deceitfulness. Deceitfulness means it's something that tricks us. It's not what we think it is. The problem with deceitful things are you might believe that they're true. It's easy to believe something is true if you've been deceived. And so the deceitfulness of sin is something to be worried about. It's easy to believe something is true when it isn't. And so we're being warned about that by Peter in our reading this morning. And in the Ephesian letter, again, Paul is writing, and he's talking about us taking on that whole armor of God that you've heard so much about. And he says that's needful because of the wiles of the devil. The wiles, the trickery, the deceit of the devil. So we're not dealing with just any adversary. He's warning us to be on guard against an adversary that will take advantage of our ignorance of his tactics, that will corrupt our minds, that will lie to us and about us, and that will practice treachery and deceit. And this is the kind of opponent that we have that Peter is warning us about, the deceitfulness of sin that so easily besets us. So, with that setting, Peter moves on to his next statement. He says, be sober and be vigilant. And now he's going to tell you why. Because, he said, your adversary, the devil. Your adversary, the devil. That word adversary there is a Greek word that simply means an opponent. And particularly, it's a word that's used to mean an opponent such as one you would encounter in a legal setting. So if you went to court and the other side was perhaps suing you for something, that would be your adversary. In fact, our court proceedings are called adversarial processes. And so that's what Peter was talking about. He says, you need to be sober and vigilant because you have an adversary out there, an adversary of the devil that he's going to tell us about. That word devil is actually a title. I don't know if you've ever really thought about that, but you read the scriptures and you see devil and Satan used a lot of times almost interchangeably. One's a name and the other is a title. And in this case, devil is a title. And it comes from a Greek word that means false witness or accuser. And it tells you a lot about the nature of sin and about the temptation to be involved in it. There are forces present among us that we are exposed to every day that we live that are false witnesses and accusers against us. These are forces of evil, and we can be lured into this, easily ensnared, the writer said. That's what Peter is warning us about. The tactics of the devil are to use false witness and accusation against us. So again, we're not up against just any old adversary, but rather one that will not deal in the truth. One who will deceive the whole world if possible. One who is the God of this world. And one who will steal the gospel out of the hearts of people. This is the kind of adversary we have. This is not something to be taken lightly, but something that should be taken seriously. That's what Peter's trying to get across. The next thing he says, after he warns us to be sober and vigilant because we have an adversary, he says the devil walks about. Walks about. I think that's an interesting statement, and there's a reason why he put that statement in there, and I think he's trying to convey something to us. That phrase, walks about, is from a Greek word that means to tread all around, to walk at large. Do you see what Peter is trying to say? That the devil walks at large. He roams about. He's looking for people to overcome. He's not just laying back hoping you'll find him. He's looking for you. And that's what Peter's trying to warn us about. Peter knew what he was talking about because he had been the victim of being sought out. The Lord said to him, as recorded in Luke 22, verse 31, Simon, Simon, indeed Satan has asked for you that he may sift you as wheat. Apparently Satan had been walking about looking for Peter. And Peter had been warned about that. Look, you're being sought out. And Peter is warning us, each one of us today, you are being sought out. It's something you need to be aware of. Be vigilant. Be watchful. Know your surroundings. Have your head on a swivel because you're being sought out. I think this phrase was put in there as it is because it was meant to convey to us how active the influence of sin is in our lives. Sometimes we think that we don't get involved in sin unless we go choose it and look for it. That's not the case. A lot of times, sin will find us out. If we are open to the influence of evil, be sure that evil will find us. If we open ourselves up to bad conduct and evil behavior, evil companions, evil places, be sure that evil will find us. The people and the places that we all subject ourselves to from time to time are the ways that the devil uses to lure us in. These are his devices. Sometimes we think about the devil like this little red creature with a pitchfork walking around. That's really not how this works. The devil works through people. The devil is able to influence us through other people. He has his emissaries. He has people who will lure us into the snares that he sets. These are the people that convey his wiles to us. So we need to be careful about the places and the people that we find ourselves. Now, when I think about that, I think about, you've heard the story about, I've got the angel on my shoulder. You know what that means. I'm sure you've heard of that. You've probably seen pictures about it. Or sometimes people say, the devil was on my shoulder. The devil was whispering in my ear. So when I think about that, this is what I would like to believe that I am. You see, depicted in this picture, the devil is there, but my better angel is the one I'm listening to. My better angel is whispering into my ear, and that's the voice that I hear. That's what I want to believe, and that's what I try to have. I want to be listening to my better angel. I want to be hearing the voice of the Lord in my ear. Do I always get that done? I wish I could tell you I did, but I don't. Sometimes I'm better at it than I am others, but sometimes that's not the only voice I'm hearing. Sometimes it looks more like that. Sometimes I got the voice for good over in this ear or this ear, and the other ear is the devil whispering to me. And I'm trying to sort out. You see that guy's expression on his face? What am I going to do? He's listening to both voices and trying to sort it out. And this is more like what the reality of things are for most of us, isn't it? We're getting both kinds of input. We're having input for good and input for bad, and they're both whispering in our ear. We got to be careful about that sort of thing because sometimes we get a little bit deaf in one ear. We don't always hear what's being whispered in that ear. The first thing you know, it looks more like this, and I hope you can see that picture. I found that, and I just had to share it with you. That's a guy, I think it's a guy, looks like it is. A guy's neck, he has a tattoo on his neck. And the tattoo depicts, the common thing that people think of when they think of the devil. That's what's depicted on his neck there, if you can see that. And that devil on his neck is whispering in his ear. He has a permanent tattoo on his neck of the devil whispering in his ear. My first thought was, who in the world would put a tattoo like that on themselves? That was my first thought. But then I thought, you know what? Maybe a lot of people ought to have that on there because maybe it depicts exactly what's going on with them. They're listening to the devil most of the time. That's who's whispering in their ear. And they, in turn, are whispering in our ear. So this is the kind of thing we have to watch ourselves about. It's easy to get from the place I said I wanted to believe I was to this place. That's not a far trip, and it's easy to get there. So as we move along through this verse this morning, and this is really, I think, the most significant thing that was said, he said that the devil walks about like a roaring lion. an interesting statement, and it opens up a lot of things for us to think about. I suspect he used that because he was trying to convey how vicious and destructive sin can be. I suspect that's what Peter meant for us to understand out of that example that he's giving, that the devil is like a roaring lion. Wonder why he chose a lion, though. Have you ever wondered about that? I mean, there are all kinds of animals to choose from. Why the lion? Why not the snake? The snake was the depiction of the original source of sin to Eve. Why not the snake? Maybe that'd be a good choice. There's all kinds of other animals that Peter could have used, but he chose to use a lion. Why was that? Well, perhaps it was because the people at that time were familiar with lions. Now, if you go to the Middle East today, you wouldn't see lions. Lions don't roam there anymore. But at the time that Peter was writing, they did. Lions were not uncommon in the Middle East. In fact, you might remember the story about David killing a lion. So obviously lions were present there, and people knew about them. They knew what they were. So Peter was putting into his idea of how the devil might be viewed a creature that they would understand, that they knew. I think even more, the lion perfectly epitomizes the effect of sin in our lives. Perfectly so. And you'll see what I mean as we go through talking just a minute about lions. You see, we don't really understand lions today. When the people read this back in the first century and a little after, they would have understood it a lot better because they were around lions in the wild. They knew what they were like. You and I don't know anything about that. I've never been around a lion in the wild. I've seen a lion in the zoo. They look like kind of lazy creatures to me, and I think in a way lions are lazy. Apparently lions are only awake about 3 hours a day, so I think they're running a close second to me in that respect. So they sleep about 20 or 21 hours a day, and they hunt 3 hours. That's about how a lion does. And so when we see lions, that's what we know. We see a lazy lion laying around in the zoo, and he doesn't really look all that threatening, especially if there's a big wall or a glass between us and them. Or maybe your idea of a lion came from the Lion King movie. So when you think of a lion, you think of that right there. I've watched Lion King with my grandkids. I can't admit to watching it by myself, but I did watch it with my grandkids, and I liked it. It was a good movie. In fact, I've seen the movie more than once, and it's an interesting movie. It's kind of a cute little movie and has some thoughts woven into it that I guess have some application in life. It's kind of an entertaining movie. But this is the idea you'd get about a lion from watching The Lion King. And so you see this lion, you think, well, he's a regal, stately being, the king of the jungle, a benevolent ruler. That's sort of how the Lion King was depicted. The truth is, that lion right there would have eaten most of the animals in that picture. That's the truth of things. That's the way lions really are. Not like that at all. The warthog standing there by him wouldn't be there. That's dinner for the lion. So if we get our idea of what a lion's like from that, we totally miss the point of this scripture. If that's what you think a lion is, you've totally missed the point. Sometimes we think a lion's like that. Well, they love their cubs, and they're kind of cute and cuddly, and you see stuffed animals that kids carry around that are lions. Well, that's not what a lion's like either. They're not cuddly at all. Not a bit. I wouldn't advise cuddling with a lion. So our concept is not accurate. And here's what a lion looks like in terms of how they really are. Get a good look at that picture if you want to know what a lion looks like. That's an angry lion. I want you to look at the teeth on that lion. If you'll notice, there really aren't any side. The lion doesn't really have any teeth back in the back of his mouth. Can you see that from that picture? The reason why is he doesn't need any because he doesn't chew up his food. He uses those long, sharp teeth in the front to just tear the food off and eat it. And he just swallows it. He doesn't really chew it up. You can't really see that lion's tongue, But if you could see the tongue on a lion, it has these little projections on it that stand up. You can see a little bit in that picture, but not very well. If a lion licked my hand 4 or 5 times, there wouldn't be any skin left on my hand. That's what a lion's like. Those long teeth and that tongue are just the beginning of what a lion is. And so this is what Peter was talking about, a creature that's like that. Not the cuddly, cute creature or the regal and stately lion king of the, ruling over his domain. That's not really the picture that Peter's trying to give us. Lions are powerful, dangerous animals that have been known to kill people whenever they could. And you even hear of that with lion tamers. Periodically you hear stories of lion tamers that get attacked by lions they've been training for years. A lion never becomes tame, even to the person who trained it. And a lion will attack without notice because that's what lions do. That's the way a lion is. And this is what Peter's trying to convey when he uses the example of a lion. There are more powerful animals than a lion. An elephant. Elephant is by far more powerful than a lion. But is an elephant as fearsome as a lion? No way. Elephants aren't out trying to eat other animals, but lions are. So there's no animal really more fearsome than a lion. So I want to think about some characteristics of a lion that'll maybe help us better understand how the devil hunts the souls of you and me, Christians, the same way a lion hunts its food. Let's talk about this. So let's talk about what kind of animal is a lion, what kind of prey does a lion hunt, and what are the lion's hunting methods. You're going to see a lot of comparisons here when we finish this. So what kind of an animal is a lion? Let's talk about that just for a second. Lions are large, kind of yellowish brown cats with huge feet and strong shoulders. If you've been to a zoo, you've probably seen that. A grown lion can be 5.5 to 8.5 feet long from head to tail, and they can stand about 4 feet tall at their shoulders. A grown lion is a big creature, very heavy, very fearsome. They are very expert in camouflage, and you notice their color, that brownish, yellowish color that they have. Well, that might not camouflage them so much in Oklahoma, but it does a really good job of camouflaging them where they roam mainly in Africa now. It used to be in a larger area. But they spend their time in the tall grass there, and the grass is sort of the same color they are. You'll see some pictures in a minute that show you how easily concealed a lion is. You would think, well, as big as a lion is, surely other animals can see them. Well, it isn't quite as easy as you might think. We sometimes get it in our head that the lion is in the jungle, in the trees, and we call him the king of the jungle, but lions really don't spend their time in a jungle. They're out in the grassy lands where the other animals are, around water holes mainly, and they don't spend time in the forest. We think of them being the king of the jungle, but that's really an inaccurate depiction of where they spend their time. A lion will spend time in the tall grass. That's where they hunt. They use that grass as camouflage, and they're being camouflaged from their prey because a lion doesn't need camouflage for any other reason, because nobody's hunting the lion. The lion doesn't need to hide from anybody else. Other creatures need to hide from the lion. The devil is a lot like that. He's a master of disguise. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14 talks about him transforming himself into an angel of light. He can camouflage what he is. So sometimes when we look at things, they may not always be what they look like they are. That's why we need to have our head on a swivel. Be paying attention to what's going on around us and make sure we understand what things really are. You see, Satan will do whatever it takes to make something that's wrong look right, to depict something that's bad as good or that is good as being bad. That's how he operates. Just like a lion, he's camouflaged and things aren't what they seem to be. Now, what kind of prey does the lion hunt? Well, lions are carnivores. We've talked about that just a little bit already. So lions eat meat. That's what they want. And they'll eat just about any meat, including sometimes even lion cubs. So that tells you a lot about the nature of a lion. No animal, big or small, is safe from a lion. Now, the lions prefer to pick off the weak and the sickly and the young and the stragglers, or those that just maybe aren't paying attention. That's usually how they get their food, is they look for things like that because that's easy picking. You don't have to do much to get that, so they like it. Now, a lion does show some respect for large animals. And they'll show a little respect for an elephant, for example, but not completely. If they need food, they'll even take down an elephant if they have to get it, because they'll attack as a group, and that way they'll be able to take down even a large animal. So no animal is actually safe. And like the lion, nobody is safe from the devil, no matter how strong we might think we are. The devil has means and manners and wiles to attack, and to attack in groups so that we're not able to resist it sometimes. So what are the lessons we get from that? Well, pay attention. Have our head on a swivel, as I said. Stay with the group. Don't be wandering off. Don't be getting away from the crowd. And don't go into lion country. That's what we can learn from that. What does a lion hunt? How does they go about hunting now? Well, you might think if you watch TV too much that a lion chases down their food, and that really isn't the case at all. Lions don't do a lot of chasing. Now, a lion's pretty fast. Lion, according to what I read, some lions have been known to run as fast as 50 miles an hour. That's pretty fast. The fastest human, I think, that has been recorded is about, like 27 miles an hour, something like that. So a lion can run twice as fast as you can. Well, whole lot more than that, because nobody in here can run 27 miles an hour. So if you're thinking about outrunning a lion, all that's going to happen is you're going to be tired when you get eaten. That's what that's going to amount to. You're not going to outrun a lion. Lions are fast. But lions don't chase down food. That's not how they get their food, and they don't have to. They're smart enough. That's the thing that a lion has going for it, is it's smarter than most animals. So it outsmarts the other animals. It doesn't have to chase them down. So a lion will simply lay around under cover of the tall grass and just wait on other animals to come drifting along, or not be paying attention, or maybe be a little slow, a little bit lacking on the uptake when they see the lion, and that's how they get their food. There's many animals that run faster than a lion. Gazelles, for example, much faster than a lion. So lions are not going to get out and chase down gazelles. And a lion can't run 50 miles an hour for very far. He can run it in short bursts, but lions are big, bulky, muscled animals. It takes a lot of energy for them to run. So they can't run very far at 50 miles an hour. So I say all that to say they don't chase down food, and the devil doesn't have to chase you down either. He doesn't have to outrun you. He can use the wiles that are available to him to do that very thing. There's two methods of hunting that a lion has, and you'll see some comparisons as we talk about this. One that I thought was kind of interesting, it was described as the grandmother's footstep method. I thought, what is that? Well, I've watched enough nature shows, I kind of understood after I read a little bit what that means. So what happens with a lion is they'll creep up to the areas where their other animals are watering typically. They'll hide in the grass there, and they'll wait for those animals to come along, and when the animals see them, well, the lion will just kind of look away like, I'm not interested in you. Go ahead, do whatever you're going to do, I don't care. And as long as those animals are watching them, the lion's kind of acting like that, kind of nonchalant. And when the animal looks away, then the lion gets a little closer. The animal looks back, and the lion goes, I'm not interested in you. And the first thing you know, the lion has crept up very close to them without them even realizing that. And that's the grandmother's footstep method. They just creep in little by little by little, luring their prey into thinking there is no danger. The lion's not interested in me, until it's too late. That's one method, and that's how they are able to capture the smaller animals. Once a lion is close, the battle is over. A lion's paw is so powerful, they'll just swipe on the legs of an animal, and the animal goes down. And once the animal's down, they have no chance. The lion is on them, and they are not getting up. The lion will either go for the throat or their backbone, and they're done. That's how the lion operates. So if they can get close, the job's done. Dinner is served. How does the devil work? A lot like that, isn't it? Kind of creeps up next to us, a little bit at a time, a little bit, just creeping in. We're thinking, no big deal. And we're thinking, he's not interested in me. Until it's too late. Until the devil's already got a hold of us. Sin has already invaded our lives. We could talk a lot more about that, but you didn't come here to hear a lesson about how a lion might receive their dinner, so we'll try to move along and make the points here. The other method they use is the surround and attack, and that one's pretty obvious. We don't need a lot of description on that. This is used mostly with bigger animals. So if they were if a pride of lions, that is a group that lives together basically as a family unit, if they were trying to take down a large animal, they wouldn't be able to do it by themselves. So they'll surround that animal. The whole group will. And as soon as one of them is able to either jump up and latch onto the backbone or onto the neck, the other ones will start biting at the legs, and before you know it, even an elephant can be taken down by a group of lions. So that's the reason I said earlier, no animal's really safe. So you're saying, well, what about the roar? I thought you said we were going to talk about facing the roaring lion. Again, this is something that we don't always understand about a lion when we read it, because we're not around lions, but lions don't go around roaring when they're hunting. I mean, if you think about it, that makes sense. What would happen if a lion walked around roaring all the time and trying to pounce on an animal? Well, they'd all run away. If the lion's roaring, they're going to know the lion's there. So lions don't roar when they hunt. They're really stealthy hunters. In fact, lions hunt mostly at night. I know you see TV and they show them hunting in the daytime. It's probably because they can't really get good pictures of them hunting at night, but mostly they hunt at night. It's easier to hide, and it's cooler, so it's not as stressful on the lion. So they hunt at night. So what about the roar? The lion does roar during the hunt, but not while he's hunting. The lion roars at the moment of attack. The minute the lion is about to pounce on the animal, if they've crept up close enough, and I was using the example of just gradually moving up a little at a time, once they get close, then comes the roar, and the animal freezes. I mean, it's frightening, the roar of a lion. Have you ever heard a lion roar? Have you heard them roar in the zoo? It's a terrifying thing. You know you can hear a lion roar from 5 miles away? 5 miles away. So you can see why an animal might get, as we say, the deer in the headlight look. If a lion roared at you, you'd get that all right. And that's when the roar comes. The roar comes after it's too late. The lion's not roaring during the hunt. When you hear the roar of a lion, you're already captured. It's too late. The devil is a lot like this, very much like this. You can see the comparison as you've listened to me describe how lions hunt and what they hunt. Can't you see that? Can't you see the influence of the devil in our lives working exactly the same way? The devil slips up on the weak, upon the unsuspecting, upon the inattentive Christian, the one that's out there on the fringes, not with the group, barely hanging on. This is who the devil attacks. That's because those are the easy ones to pick off, just like the lion. Even a Christian that's strong is in danger because, remember what I said about surrounding large animals? The devil has a way to do that too. You know, if you're strong and you get in a group of people that are bound to do the wrong thing, the first thing you know, they'll bring you along with them. You'll get caught up in the crowd. And the first thing you know, you'll be rushing with a group to do the wrong thing, to do evil. Just exactly like the lion does by surrounding a large animal, even a strong animal. So the last thing he says in our talks, in our talking about this morning, is that he's seeking whom he may devour. A little bit more about the lion. Young people, you can, maybe if you're homeschooled, you might be able to count this as a science class today. I don't know if that would work or not. You can think about that. Did you know that the lionesses do most of the hunting? The male lions don't hunt much. They sometimes do if they get desperate for food, but mostly it's the lionesses that do the hunting. And I've kind of practiced that around my house. That's kind of the way we do things. I kind of show up when the food's ready, and I let Debbie do the hunting for it. I thought that was the way of nature, so it seemed right to me. But that's how lions are. The lionesses go out and do most of the hunting, and when they have brought down an animal for the pride to eat, then the dominant male of that pride, who is the leader and protector of the tribe, then they'll show up. And the dominant male eats first. Now, ladies, don't start making something out of this that it's not. We're talking about lions here now, not people. So the dominant male eats first, then the females, and then the cubs. That's the way it's done. What do you think's left? What do you think the leftovers are after a lion pride eats? Nothing. There's nothing left. They devour what they kill. They eat it all. The lion like the internal organs of the animal most. That's what they like to eat. But they'll eat everything, even down to some of the bones, because there's a certain mineral in those bones that they need. So lions devour everything. Now, I want you to think about the nature of sin. What does sin do in the lives of people that get caught up in it? What does it do to them? Pretty much devours them, doesn't it? Have you seen it happen? Have you seen people get caught up in sin, so entangled and ensnared in it? The wiles of the devil have been used on them, and now they can't get away. They heard the roar of the lion, but it was too late. And they got completely devoured in it. And that's easy to happen if we're not paying attention to what's going on. There's a lot more I could say about the nature of lions this morning, but I think you see why Peter used a lion as his example, don't you? The lion depicts the nature of sin very, very well. Peter knew that, and now we know that. And now we need to think about, how do we handle this? What do we do about it? Lions are fearsome and they're dangerous, and so is the devil. We're no match for a lion in the wild. As I said, you're not going to run away from a lion and win that race. But we do have some weapons available to us. We do have weapons against the devil. The devil is not someone who can't be defeated. We have weapons and we know what to do. We had some information about that in the very beginning of our reading this morning. Be sober and be vigilant. That's the first thing to do. Be on guard. The second thing is submit to God and resist. Resist the devil. And the writer says, if you do that, he'll flee from you. It's sort of like the lion when he's hunting is lazy enough that he goes after the easy prey. So if you resist, if you push back, if you're not an easy target, if you're not off out there not paying attention, all of those things we've talked about, the lion will move on. The devil will ignore you and move on to someone else or some other thing. If you resist. If you don't resist, by the time you hear the lion's roar, it's too late. I found that picture and I wanted to kind of wrap up today by showing you that. You see that tall grass there? That's what I was talking about, where the lion hunts. You see that lion lying down in that grass? And very kind of almost hard to see. They say that animals will gather around water holes and they'll even see the lions there, but they kind of get lulled into thinking there's nothing going on. The lion's just lying there like that picture shows. And the animals will go ahead and drink and hang around the water hole, ignoring the lion. It's kind of amazing that people we would think that they would do that. And you can see there how hard that lion might be to see. It said that animals are really just incredibly foolish about what they do. That's how they get caught. And I want to tell you this morning, don't be foolish. Don't be taking chances with the lion. The lion is concealed just like that every day of your life. And you see the caption at the bottom of that? The lion is an animal to be feared, especially by those nearest to where he roams. If you're hanging out and spending time and doing things around where the lion is, by the time you hear the roar, it will be too late. So I encourage you this morning, pay attention to the lion. The lion is roaming. The lion is present among us. The lion works through circumstances, through people. The lion is whispering in our ear every day. Let's not heed the things that the lion is telling us, but let's resist and let's have the devil flee from us. That's a conclusion of what I wanted to say this morning. I appreciate your attention. I hope it was somewhat interesting to you, and I tried to work into our talk this morning some things that would bring these thoughts that Peter had to life for you so that you'd understand what it was Peter was trying to tell us. We don't close here at any service without offering an opportunity to anybody who is present that might need our help. Perhaps you feel like that the lion's gotten a little close to you and you need prayer. We're ready to do that with you and for you. Perhaps you've not been with a part of the group and you're out there on your own and you want to be part of a group so that you've got some protection from the lion. We're ready to assist you in that regard by baptism this morning if that's what you need. Whatever need you might have, we're ready to help you if you'll come forward while we stand and sing the song that's been announced.